Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Sybil. I run a company called I Like the Sound of That with my business partner there, who's busy on his phone. Hi, Joe. We're a brand partnership and experiential agency, working solely in music. I'm going to ask the panellists to introduce themselves, say what their name is, where they work, and what their role is, and then we'll start to get some questions in at the end of the session. Can we just do a show of hands in the room so we know what audience is made up of? How many people in the room are artists? About a third at a push, maybe a quarter. Managers? Very few. And I know nobody likes to do this, but can a couple of you haven't put your hands up, shout out what it is you do? Do you run labels? Any labels? Few. Anybody else? Tech startup? Any more? Everyone's too shy. Website? Digital? Cool. One more over there? Okay, didn't catch either of those. Video director, fantastic. Okay. So to my left is Joe. I don't know if your microphone's probably working.
Hello,
this is Joe Burford from Talenthouse. Can you talk a little bit about your...
Hi, I'm from Talenthouse. Nice to see there's some technology people. That's my background. I've worked in digital technology and social media for the last 5 years in social. So I'm coming from a slightly different perspective. Talenthouse is one of the largest platforms for original content creation, and music is one of the verticals we work under. So I help aspiring and emerging artists like some of you out here connect with A-list celebrities and brands through unique collaborations, and my job is to turn it social.
Matthew.
Hello, I'm Matthew Bennett. I'm responsible for getting Clash magazine together every month as the deputy editor, and we obviously work quite a lot with brands because labels obviously have diminishing budgets. So, lots of product placement, lots of events, lots of solutions for brands that want to break into music because they've been so involved in music since 2008, etc. Just 1,000 loose ends every month put into one place as a magazine on top. So, yeah, pretty busy.
And Paul.
Well, you've heard enough about me. But the last-minute addition of me jumping on the panel is because of my background at Levi's and after, either at Levi's, helping Levi's to have a proper music strategy, because I didn't have one, and then after that, helping various companies, brands, and also labels get their act together in terms of what music marketing really is, as opposed to what they thought it was. So I do quite a bit around helping musicians as well, in terms of developing their brand strategies.
Okay, before we kick off, are there any artists or labels or anybody in the room that's not a brand that's done any work with brands at all? Yep.
I have.
Thanks for that. Can you just elaborate a little bit so we've got some point of reference?
Yeah, my background's in corporate branding, working with, I also work with fashion sector and sort of media brands as well.
Okay. So I think it's fair to say fashion was probably one of the leaders in terms of brands being able to break into the artist market. And I think, hello everybody, I think a few years, maybe sort of 5-10 years ago, it would have been seen as a complete sellout for an artist to get in bed with a brand and do something that was not based around gigging and touring and building up a fan base in the traditional sense. I think now, and you can decide whether this is a fair comment or not, but probably brands are probably the most important people bankrolling new artists today, because the labels don't have the money like they used to. I think probably we'll start with Joe with Talenthouse. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about where you came from and how you got involved in Talenthouse, and how perhaps a couple of case studies about what you do and how it works for the artist and for the brand?
Yeah, that's quite a lot. I hope I can. My background, as I said, was digital and social. So what I do is I make sure that the big opportunities that come in through the artists and brands actually go out to the people that matter, which for us are the aspiring artists. We have a platform of 1.5, actually over that now, emerging and established artists on our platform all collaborating, and we work with the labels, and what we do with the labels is we help them sell more music, and it's through connecting with people like you and working on original content. So one really nice case study that kind of shows this point and is a bit of an overview of how we work is Sennheiser, a brand that you're probably all aware of through electronics and headwear. So Sennheiser wanted to showcase their wonderful equipment and their beautiful studio, and they also wanted to tie up with an artist. So we got in touch with Labyrinth, and he already used Sennheiser's studio and loved it. It was one of his favourites. So that was quite a nice, authentic link, which always helps. So we tied them up together, and then we brought in a competition model. So we wanted to find some original content that Labyrinth could use to remix and create a new song. The girl that won has had phenomenal exposure now. She is now laying down a track with Labyrinth. Her name's Claire Louise Rossi. If any of you want to check it out, Talenthouse, listen to her track. So she uploaded it. It was quite kind of bit like a Celine Dion-ishy track that you wouldn't think that Labyrinth would ever go near, but he really loved it. Obviously put a bit of a dubstep thing behind it. We had a lot of beautiful footage that I seeded out through digital channels, and it created a wonderful campaign. For the brand, we delivered a 15% increase on sales. It was their only bit of marketing activity for consumers during that quarter. So that's how they knew it was us. And we also increased their social following by 23%. So for everybody, it was a real winning piece. The artist got to work with Labyrinth and is now making a track and has a very authentic relationship with him where he's mentoring her. The brand's got sales and then took a campaign digital. And for us, we got to reward our platform and showcase what it can do.
And for one of the biggest challenges when it comes to marrying up different parties is people's expectations about what a brand wants and also what an artist wants. And also, do you come across examples ever where a brand wants to work with a particular artist and the artist flatly refuses, and vice versa?
A tricky one we had was with Intel, actually. Intel was a bit of a challenging campaign because they wanted to run a UK-wide DJ competition to find some of the best emerging DJs and producers. We've done them before and they work really well. The issue we had with Intel was that they just weren't used to dealing with a grassroots outreach company like us. And the way we talk to our students and the way we talk to the people is through me, and I don't talk corporate language. So they wanted to feed us some sound bites and things that were very Intel branded that have been signed off by people very high up. That just doesn't roll with what we do.
So they wanted people to make it sound like they were saying something genuinely from the heart when it was been scripted.
Absolutely,
and did they not get that wouldn't work?
At the start they didn't, but by the end when it wasn't working they did.
What sort of things did they want them to say? That's hilarious.
Just everything had to be powered up by Intel, and it was quite difficult, but they got it, On the brand side, they were fantastic. They really did adapt, and for them it was a learning curve that they took, and they trusted us and said, okay, on this occasion, we will let you lead us on the copy. And
how long ago was this, just out of interest?
This finished in October, so it's a really recent campaign. Yeah, it's very successful. They loved it in the end, and they sold lots more product. We had some beautiful branding, but for us it was a challenge because we're normally used to talking in a certain language to artists that don't appreciate being fed inauthentic sound bites.
And do you ever get to the point where the artist, if they're, for example, with Sennheiser, where there's a kind of existing relationship that an artist may have with a product, it might be an easier sell-in to get them to talk like that, but ultimately, for the fans to believe and have trust in what the artist is saying, it's really got to. It can't be scripted.
Integrity is absolutely pivotal to it, and also for us having the right ambassadors. So behind most of our campaigns, we engage with an ambassador. It can be somebody like Justin Timberlake, who's actually amazing and really into helping artists come through the ranks, or it can be, as we worked with on the DJ competition, and a DJ called Benji B. But when we have an artist behind it, and they all remember what it was like to be like you guys, they all do, and they're lovely to work with. Leona Lewis is a particularly lovely person to work with. She does all of her call to action videos through Talenthouse on her own, just using her phone. Whatever you think of her music, she's a lovely girl, and she taught, and she came from a talent search herself, so she doesn't forget that. So absolutely, integrity is huge.
And Matt, for you, how long have you been at Clash now?
8 years.
8 years. So you must have seen quite a shift in both the way that brands are engaging with you as a magazine, but also with artists.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting a lot better at it. Like when we first started, one of our main roles was just to, I suppose, keep everybody happy. Had to keep our reader really happy, so they, won't get covered in
readers.
The reader. He's around somewhere, and make sure that they weren't horrendously exposed to nonsense kind of advertorial stuff. Then we have to keep the band really happy so they feel that they're not compromised, and then keep the brand very, very happy, obviously. And to start with, 8 years ago, it was just really crude. Like,
Did you have much of a battle though? Were you able to? How much control did you have in terms of not accepting certain things that they wanted to do, or were you kind of beholden to them to some extent?
a lot of the time, it's just you have to just be really firm with the brand of just like you just can't do that, and if you want that, then we're just not going to do it, you know. And then it's like the money has to pipe down a little bit. But then more recently, you know, it's getting just easier and easier and easier, and there's a real kind of sophistication and sensibility and a sensitivity as well. A lot of the brands, they know how to perform and how to act, and yeah, so it's getting a lot easier. There's still some horror shows floating around.
I agree as well, and the fact that, well, I work in social, they understand now at brands how important peer-to-peer engagement is, and everything that you do on the social web, they really are, they're getting that now. So you're not having those conversations where they're asking you to do things that aren't right, because they're also concerned it will start seeding out through the social web, especially when you have a platform like ours, which everyone talks on.
And I guess there was quite a shift, maybe, well, it's still going on, but a lot of people, when the major labels started culling a lot of their staff, a lot of people went from the label and from the music side to work in brands, and soon after, a lot of the people from the brand side came to work in the industry because they swapped that expertise. That must have helped quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the best things we've done recently is we've been doing this Converse project, and brands, like, it was almost like the next generation of real deep thought, kind of what Red Bull achieved as well, of just like going really low to the ground, using people like us as journalists to kind of do the research rather than marketing agencies, and doing like 5-year, 6-year kind of investments where they're not really expecting to get anything back.
When you say they're not expecting to get anything back, so this isn't about having, because obviously Converse bought the 100 Club on Oxford Street. People know that the 100 Club, we were going to lose the 100 Club, and Converse came in and very quietly purchased it, didn't make a song and dance about it, didn't rebrand it the Converse 100 Club, and they've been doing gigs there ever since, haven't they?
Yeah, just on Mondays, quite, you know, they've just not taken it over, they've not even put a logo up, and that worked really, really well for them, so they got us this summer to kind of do loads of consultancy around Europe to try and find other things like that. Obviously, that's a unique case, but and you know, they really understand now that, you know, that local market heat, or what they'd be saying a few years ago, isn't necessarily relevant now, because they're going to sell loads of shoes anyway. It's like how they can part of music moving on pretty much forever.
And how do they measure the success in that? Because if they're, like you say, they're going to sell the shoes anyway, they're not getting any kind of press exposure. How do they measure that success in the projects they get involved in?
Well, they've got 40 million Facebook fans, but that's actually before they even started doing this kind of philanthropic aims. So I don't know. It's really unquantifiable. I think it's just, that's what I mean. It's the next generation of, right, really thinking about how brands should operate as guardians of music rather than this kind of short-term grab. And the only other brand that's really done that really well, I think, is Red Bull on a kind of global level with their music academy. They own so much of music now.
Well,
Fred Perry's doing okay.
Fred Perry does very well, yeah.
I quite like what they're doing.
And Paul, you were working with Levi some time ago. For them, obviously, they became a hugely iconic brand. Can you talk about your role when you started working with them, and what the objective of your role was in terms of where you wanted to take Levi and their relationship with music?
There was lots of people who wanted to take Levi's music approach, and that was a problem. The problem was that Levi's, like many other brands, quite often committed money in the music space based on their emotion, not on good business sense. So it's like, oh, they're really cool, so let's chuck them some money. Or I really like that band, I want to do it. There was one example. There's the Levi's brand and the Dockers brand. And the Dockers brand, you know, Dockers chinos kind of thing. There was a situation in one market where there was money being committed to one of the coolest radio stations in the country, in that particular market. It's because the Dockers brand manager wanted to be associated with cool, even though the brand didn't fit. So it's quite often brand managers are led by emotion, and that's a problem.
You mean the actual individual has a desire to be seen on a particular, or as we found, Matt, as well, certainly some of the festivals that we work on, or...
They don't make sense.
No, but the person concerned wants to go and do something at Glastonbury. They want to be at Glastonbury, so they'll find a project to do at Glastonbury or a particular festival.
But then that's problem number one, is sometimes the emotion overtakes good business sense, number one. And then the flip side of that, because it's emotion is leading it, then they can't prove the success after it, because that's the other thing is they throw money at stuff, and many brands throw money at stuff in the music space, but they haven't put in place how to work out whether it was worthwhile or not. Outcome is that they don't ever get the money for the next time round, so they've become very short term. The best brands, just like Converse, are committed to music in a way that isn't based on short-term gain and emotion. It makes good business sense because what they're doing, they're giving to fans of music who then go, Converse are always there and they always seem to be doing something good for us. And they build trust, long-term trust. That's the right strategy, not just throwing lots of money and hoping it sticks in, a bit like Barclays doing dubstep nights. I mean, well, they had big, years and years ago at Ministry of Sound, they had a great big Barclays logo when you walked in. Everyone loses. The fans go, what the hell are they doing here? Barclays look like idiots, and Ministry of Sound look like money-grabbing. You know, it just doesn't work on all fronts.
I think it's quite interesting. There's a case study, a fairly anonymous case study that we always cite. There was an artist that did a tour a good few years ago, this was, and there were two brands that were associated with the tour, and one was a high street retailer, and the artist would go and do an install that afternoon before they went and did a gig in the evening, and the other brand was a sunglasses brand, and the high street retailer barked lots of orders at their staff and made sure that the goodie bags were in every store when the band were there, and made sure that when the customers who'd been to see the band were there, they all got a goodie bag when they left, and that was the extent of their relationship. It was all about getting them in the store and making sure they had a goodie bag when they left. The people from the sunglasses brand told one of their members of staff to go on the tour with the band, and the guy took a bunch of sunglasses, handed them out willy-nilly, went on the road with the band, formed a relationship. They all got on like a house on fire, and by the end of the tour, the band couldn't have given two shits about the high street retailer with whom they had no relationship. But the guy from the sunglasses brand, they had not only a great personal relationship, but they were wearing the sunglasses, you know, and it just became something that became very natural. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. And people are not easily fooled. They, you know,
we know who,
saying earlier,
and you and I know who that retail brand was.
Well, I'm not saying it out loud.
I will. It was Levi's. So I wasn't there. However, no, but it's true. But that because the problem is that there are people who get in between the whole process. In that situation, you have PR agencies, you have all sorts of different agents in between managing the situation and trying to showcase how much value they add, and they stop the direct relationship between the brand and the artist. When an artist sits down with a person who works at the brand, they go, oh, actually, these guys are all right. I can quite happily sort of do stuff with
Which
them.
is why the personal relationship is so important.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
That Sennheiser example
right.
was a really good one because it was very authentic, and yeah, like you said, consumers, people aren't stupid. They know when it's all feels wrong.
One of the other things I wanted to kind of touch on was back to you, Matt, and also with you, Joe. I think before social networking was such a big thing, for brands to be seen, it was all about above the line advertising and having that visual presence. I think with social networking now and other channels, it's much easier for people to pick and choose who they want to engage with and who they want to get messages from.
Yeah.
I think, how is that working for Clash? Because you still produce your monthly printed magazine, but you still have a very strong online presence, which is growing.
This is like the shop window, basically, that gets us so much business from doing white label stuff with brands, like putting on kind of gigs, creating kind of contract publishing, doing like anything really, but this is the thing that kind of seduces them and gives us our credentials and our authenticity. And you know.
The styling has changed, though. Is it last year? Is it 18 months? I don't know how long ago it was.
Yeah, nearly 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's become much more of a, much less of a glossy magazine, but much more of something that you almost like a coffee table magazine that you want to keep on show.
Yeah, it's vital for our existence to keep putting out an amazing magazine. We won Magazine of the Year at the Record of the Day this year because it's we don't run a single press pick these days. Everything is shot. Nearly all was shot on film. It's on matte paper. It just looks and feels
Yeah, it is
lovely.
lovely. And I think even though I work in digital and I'm a massive, obviously, digital fan, there is nothing better than having, some time to sit down and absorb, content like that properly the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, and there's an authenticity thing with a lot of our photographers who they'll only shoot for us on the condition that it doesn't go online. Like we've got like illustrators who are like, I'll do it total mates rates, but it can't go on the internet. Like it has to only exist in print and on really good paper. So there's that kind of cult, that kind of fetish thing going on that can ties really in with kind of authenticity and just existing, like holding a space, I suppose.
And for the brands that Clash is working with now compared to the ones that they were working with 5 years ago, have you seen a shift in the type of brands, especially on the fashion side, I think, that are wanting to work with you?
Yeah.
Because of that styling.
Fly 53 5 years ago, and now it's got Yves Saint Laurent on the back and, quite high-end fashion stuff now. So 80% of our advertising now comes from fashion brands. So we put a lot of effort into making them happy. We dress all the bands, we shoot them all really well, and that's kind of our model, really.
And Joe, for you, do you think Talenthouse could do what it does now without the internet and social media and have that reach?
No, not at all. We are from Silicon Valley. We started up. We're a tech company. So we started up and we've also won technology awards called the Red Herring Award, which sounds terrible, doesn't it? Sounds awful. I'm really embarrassed saying it, but trust me, it's really, really good. It was won by Salesforce and Twitter before. So no, we're pure technologists. Our heart is based in technology, and I use social media as a way of sharing. For me, I believe that there won't be anything called social media in 3 or 4 years' time. It will just be seen as social. It's like it will just be a marketing platform. So we are pure play technologists that have a heart in artists' relations.
And Paul, for you, are there any projects that you're working on at the moment that you can see that the way that they're put together and the way that they're executed and the way that the brands deal with them, they've totally got their heads around some of the things that have gone wrong previously?
Oh, I'd love to say, yeah, it's all brilliant and it's all wonderful and it's great and everyone gets it. But the reality is the vast majority of brands are still not getting their heads around social at all. They just really don't know what they're doing. There was an example last year, a car company I was working with, and it was just, I spent more time with the brand and the agency educating them about how social works than with the artists, because the artists know exactly what they're doing. But it's the work. So, which is fine, because there's work to be done. But that's the real challenge. That first and foremost, not having a strategy, just doing stuff, is a bit of a problem because for brands. The other thing is sometimes artists are, and rightly so, there are certain brands they won't work with and will work with, and that's rightly so. But the problem is some of them keep changing their minds. So one
The brands or the artists?
No, the artists. So they draw the line in the sand, and then when they're a bit, their career's going down, then they'll take the money. Or when they're coming up, they'll have certain views, and then those changes, which is fair enough. But it's just tricky for brands because brands don't understand the music world. Many of them, they really struggle. Sports is much easier because there's all of these companies who help brands make sense of it, and there's long-term deals in sport, 12-year deals in sport. You just don't get that in music and that's why when you get a brand who just, even with the nightmares of who owns the rights and who to speak to and a panel of 25 people from a record label all saying that we can do it 360. To have brands that are committed to music over the long time and do it in spite of all of that should be championed.
I remember having a conversation on another panel, and I think one of the challenges between sport and music is that sport has a very regular fixed calendar. Predominantly, mostly team sport, so it doesn't matter if some of your players drop out or in 10 years' time they're not part of it. It's the brand is actually the team. Whereas with the artists, they don't put the album out till it's ready. Some of them do, and that doesn't always work. They don't have a schedule for how frequently the music or the album should come out. We don't know when they're touring, so it's less of a fixed thing for the brand to get on board with.
Yeah, but we all know in the summer there's a whole bunch of festivals. So why do festival companies come to me and go, oh, could you get us some money from a brand? When's the festival? 2 weeks' time. I mean, well, do you know how brands work in terms of the timescales? And they go, yeah, but and the same with bands as well. Brand managers come and say, oh, we could do with some sponsorship. When's the tour? Next month.
Well, we actually get that a lot. We're getting approached by quite a lot of global advertising agencies who are starting to realise that when they put their strategy together for a brand, bringing music in at the 11th hour is no longer working because apart from, as you say, all of the rights, there's a lot more to consider. So they're coming to us now for projects that they're now working on 2014, which for us is actually quite a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
So on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
The beauty of working for a technology company, fortunately, is that because we've sort of spent millions and millions on some of the coding we've got, we can turn things around really, really quickly. So that's why we have quite a nice relationship with the labels. They can come to us and say, oh my God, we've got Jessie Ware, she's going to be on the show next week. We need to do something like now. So we can actually do it. But at the same time, I always push back and talk to them about who at the label is going to be amplifying it, who's going to be driving it. So we can do it because technology has advanced us to that stage, but still, again, the principles remain. Who is going to be the one leading it and taking ownership, which was always a challenge.
And Matt, for you, just because we know this from the summer, I mean, you must get approached by quite a lot of brands. Do you sometimes struggle to put together a concept that you think will work for them? And I know with the Right Guard sessions that you did this year at festivals, deodorant's not the sexiest product in the world.
Sexy. No, there was a big conversation about that. Essentially, Right Guard came to us and were like, we want to be cool and we want to be involved in music. Can you help us? So there was quite a long meeting in Clash that kind of resembled the Taliban on acid, I suppose. Very, very split opinions. And in the end, we went for it. And Joe, that we work with, has absolutely smashed it. It's become a bit of an annual institution. People have accepted it. It's just, when something becomes a thing and people just like, oh, it's that, it's online. He had a KPI, which is, key performance indicator of getting 1 million YouTube views for the brand. And he did it in like 3 months, just doing backstage sessions. People like Richard Hawley, Beardy Man. We just hang out backstage at festivals and try and grab people and then give them loads and loads of banter and get them to do an acoustic set or a little interview. And it kind of went from this really tenuous, like, do we want to do this, to like, everyone's really comfortable with it, it gets us loads of traffic, it's a really well-paid account, and it's gone from tenuous to very successful.
And were there any artists that just went, it's Right God, I'm not doing it?
Some, yeah, but then they're kind of stuck backstage, so you just kind of just keep laying banter onto them, and just eventually, a lot of personality goes a long way backstage, so you can just...
Especially
there's
Joe's.
loads of people that we would never thought we would get. We managed.
And how much of the conversation was it about it being backstage rather than anywhere else? Or was that just a really simple decision?
They just, it had to happen there for us to kind of have exposure to them. And artists aren't gonna, Nile Rodgers from Chic is not gonna want 1,000 people gawping at him in front of a deodorant van. But backstage, with a beer and a bit of chai, he's fine. So,
I just because obviously there's the brands that are being mentioned on the stage are all big super brands, but there's I'm sure here and across the country there are lots of musicians who are struggling musicians or just trying to get by, and a lot of them haven't got the chance to get in the door of some of these big brands or that megabucks. But one of the things, and we briefly touched on just outside, was the sense of brands, companies, organisations at a local level, not just at a national and global level. Given that 90% of our economy is driven by small businesses, small, medium-sized businesses, not the big global companies, especially as they don't pay tax here, some of them.
Starbucks.
The list is long. Given that's the situation, then all of these small businesses who are trying to get exposure, trying to get a way through, trying to get noticed in the local community, there's an immense amount of opportunity at a local level to do stuff with, your local shop and, the local businesses. And we can all talk about, we want to get some multi-million deal with some big brand, but there's so much at different levels that can be achieved with companies, with organisations, with brands, not just at a global level.
I know we started a little late, but so we're going to go over by about 5 minutes. Is anybody on the floor got any questions that they'd like to ask or comments they'd like to share? Hello. I think we're going to bring you a microphone. Can you just say your name and where you're from as well, please?
Hi there, my name is Anthony. I'm a music producer and also starting a tech website. I'm just curious to know what a brand's music strategy would look like, since none of us in the room have much experience with it. So when they're starting on day one, how do they formulate it? What kind of budgets? What kind of timelines?
Got it. I mean, it really does
Yeah.
vary.
Yeah.
It varies hugely, and I'll let these guys talk about specific examples. I would say what we're seeing more and more is that brands like to take ownership of something, so they like to create something that's proprietary to them rather than necessarily tagging onto something else. I think that's happening more and more. Matt?
Yeah, well, it really does vary. I mean, sometimes it can be like an email with a figure on it going, and sometimes it can be a 25-page document that is absolute nonsense that 20 different people put together, you know. I mean, they are getting better, but a lot of the time it involves getting them over all this marketing chat and speaking to them really directly like humans. I'm total editorial. There's people in our office that, you know, do a lot of blue sky thinking, kick whales up and down the beach until tea time and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the time it's just, you know, cutting through terrible documents and speaking to people that actually matter, because a lot of it gets lost in terrible documents.
That's very, very true. I get briefs through and I just think, who the hell has written this? It's like a whole bunch of people that pull out a lot of adjectives that make no sense. But you do sometimes get brands that do give you really good, concise briefs, and budget-wise, it can be anything. Really, really, from £10,000, some briefs come in for, you know, up to £1 million. But it's all about the target audience and who they want to engage with. It always is, and then obviously work back from there.
Yeah. Can I just add, in terms of there's the situation with brands right now and the situation with brands where they need to be. There's two separate things. Where they are right now, many brands are working in the old way of planning, which is get around March, the business plan, May, the brand plan, June, the marketing plan, and then they give it to their agencies in a brief to come up with some ideas in September for the following year. That's how it's always been, roughly, right? The problem is, we as people, as lovers of music, aren't hanging around for the O2 Arena Festival tour between March 12th and March 29th. We're forever connected with music, so the brands are now having to move to this always-on model of having to try and find ways of providing content, and so video director, good business. They're going to have to change the way they construct their planning process. So they're going to have to be a lot more quicker. So that's why Talenthouse is great, because they can respond to that urgency. But the brand folk have to change their mentality, because many of them are stuck in that old model and they can't shift.
One of the biggest problems that the brands have is that they don't. A lot of our experience is that, you know, they'll say, oh, we want to work with an artist, we need to ring the record label. It's pretty much the worst thing you can do, actually. The record labels tend to act like doctors' receptionists if they don't think it's going to work for them. I know you may disagree from
I totally agree with you.
They tend to
it's
act
really
like
funny.
doctors' receptionists. I know plenty of examples where artists found out retrospectively that they had an amazing project they could have got involved in. The record label decided that they couldn't be bothered. That's an actual fact. They didn't think there was anything in it for them. Just forgot about it. If you want to get to the artist, go to the artist, but probably more importantly, their manager. And there are ways to do that. And that's why, as an agency, we're getting so much incoming now, because we don't deal with the labels. We know a lot of the labels, and we know mostly the small independent labels. But there's a massive misconception about how you get involved in the world of music and also how it operates, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that the brands have.
I really do agree with Sybil, the way they behave in that respect. I've got some really positive examples, but only because we've built up a relationship with the labels over quite a long period of time, and now they do answer the phone to us in a different non-receptionist way. But previously they would have done, and it's taken a lot of work to get to that stage. But yeah, I do sit in meetings where if you don't, in my role, drive it from their side, like call them up and make sure they're doing things, a lot doesn't get done.
Yeah, but to answer the question, basically, just a really clear idea and don't talk loads of shite, and just make sure you know what you want and don't make it too long.
One last thing. Do they know which artists they want?
No.
No, they think they know until you say, that'll either cost you X or have you thought about this?
Sometimes, but I would say there are examples where they sort of go, we would like that person, but they haven't thought out why that person other than the emotional bit. Other times they don't know what they want, but quite often then they get pushed towards things that don't fit because the people who are advising them don't know about business strategy or brand strategy, so that all gets lost. So what it comes down to is ultimately what is the brand trying to do? They're not there to help the artists sell records, but they can help the artists grow their fan base at the time, so everyone wins, that the fan gains, the brand gains, and the band gains, as you said earlier. It's crucial. The problem is they don't follow that process many of the times. The ones that do build immense long-term trust. That's the critical thing. But in terms of planning, there's a lot that can be improved, definitely.
Yeah. If you get...
Oops, I'm sorry.
Shut up. I've forgotten.
I
was going
agree.
to say, I think I don't want to upset the rest of the afternoon schedule, so we've got time for one more question, please. Preferably not in 3 parts. Thank you. Is there a mic? Can you say your name and where you're from?
Hello, hi, Kentake, Bamboo Sword. There was a comment from Paul, I think, earlier about brands not getting social media. You might have answered it just now when you talked about them being kind of old school or the planning schedule. But is there something else? What's not to get, really? I didn't really...
What's not to get?
Yeah, I don't...
I can give you about 1,001 examples of how they're just not getting it.
Yeah.
How one brand is actually for a lingerie brand, and someone asked them about the fit size of a product that they had on their Facebook page, and their response was, "Oh, we can help you with that. Could you please contact us on our email address?" Right? So I think if that's just a little tiny example, another example. Well, actually, no, I can give you
I've got quite a decent funny one as well, actually. Odeon Cinema is quite a well-known one. Actually went out and said on their Facebook page, "Hey guys, tell us what you think about your Odeon experience. Talk about set yourself up." So they just had, just comment after comment after comment. Bad seats, uncomfortable seats, horrible, dingy, smelly, bad food. Everything came through, and their first reaction was, "Oh my God, let's shut our Facebook page down." But no, that is obviously not how you do it. It's like anything. Everyone makes mistakes. It's how you respond to them that gives you. And it's better to say sorry as a brand, guys. We're working on this. People believe that. Everyone's.
Too many brands are run by their legal department as opposed to run from the heart. And if they just be... So there's a Reader's Digest survey on trust, a global survey on trust, 2011, right? I know maybe not many people in the room read Reader's Digest, but it's a great thing. This survey is great. It said 79% of Europeans don't trust politicians, not surprisingly. 81% don't trust advertising, right? 81% don't trust it. So we're talking about more people have less faith in advertising than they have in politicians. That sort of says that
that is very relative, right, though?
Yeah.
Right? So, but 81%, so more... So we're talking about trust. So any brand who promises that we're cool and stuff in music, if they don't deliver and they don't give an amazing experience to fans and also they don't treat the artists with respect, then they're going to be out the door.
Okay, I'd like to thank you all for coming and being here this afternoon. I'd like to thank Joe and Matt and Paul for their contribution, and I think people are going to be hanging around for maybe 5 or 10 minutes after. If you've got any other questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.